Good girl. All right, welcome to 5 Minute Fridays. My name is Jim Putnam. I figured this would be a good time of year to talk about planning for next year. It's one of the things we talk about in the weekly garden planner quite a bit, is taking notes and thinking about the future of the garden, and how things went the previous year, kind of going over those things, writing those things down, making sure that some of the successes that we had in the garden, making sure that we can repeat them the next year and remember the types of flowering things or vegetable plants or whatever we had in the garden, and also to remember some that didn't go so great that we would not want to repeat in the garden. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff on the weekly garden planner. If you're interested in it, it's over on the website. But as the year's ending here, we're thinking about what we're doing here in this garden, and a lot of folks may be thinking about expanding the garden. So last year, this was a turf area here in the front garden, and going into last year, and I kind of knew when I put it in that I'd ultimately convert this to a bed. It doesn't look like much now because we're here in the end of December, but during the peak of the summertime, this area was just incredibly colorful. It's basically a cottage garden design. Everything was probably in the 2.5 foot range, something like that in here, and Steph had done a great job in designing the color scheme for this area. Normally we do much brighter colors. These were slightly more muted than our normal colors, but it was beautiful. And it's kind of surrounded by a bit of a shrub wall around it, but we can look out the front window, see all the birds enjoying it. Really nice space, but we're thinking through, we don't want to do the same things each year, so it's a good time of year to be planning for what flowering things are going to go in this space, or maybe you're planning on expanding a space or creating a space like this. So this time last year, we were taking out the grass, adding in the wood chips, adding in the compost, and getting it ready. That might be your version. For us, this area is now prepped, it's ready. We're looking at what seeds we want, what seed we're going to be starting. A little too early to be starting seed because our April 15th is our kind of average last frost date here in Raleigh, so I don't want to be starting seeds this early, but we'll be starting them sometime around mid-February, but I want to be planning for that, thinking about a color scheme, looking at photos online, maybe looking back through some of our videos, from last year. If you're interested in all the things that were out here, we went through plant by plant on what was added out here. There were eggplants out here, and the eggplants were a beautiful part of the display for this front garden, and you get eggplants from it. So that's one of the things we're thinking about right now, is just planning for next year, purchasing seed for next year. Another thing you might want to be planning for next year is we're going to have another open house. We had an open house this past year, had about 800 people here over 2 days. It is going to be a ticketed thing next year. And so I'm going to have that up on the website soon. So be listening to the Sunday question and answer videos, and I'll announce when that goes up on the website. But you might want to plan for visiting our garden here in Raleigh this next year. So let's jump around and talk about some other things we're planning for in 2025. We planted a lot of things very closely in this garden. It's one of the thoughts in landscape design is actually planting things a little bit closer and then culling things later, or hard pruning things later. It kind of helps to crowd things a bit, to have their roots protected from the direct sunlight, helps things grow a little bit faster. Plus, some of these shrubs take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to establish themselves in the garden in some sort of way that makes a real impact. That's a long time to wait. And so crowding things sometimes helps with that. When you do that, though, some things are going to have to be moved later, or culled later, or hard pruned later. So we have a couple of clethra here that we're likely going to be transplanting out of this space in the front garden. They're a little larger than they need to be. We've got some other space opening up for them that we're excited to talk about in 2025 as well. Behind that, there's 5 Leanne Clara. It really is a space that needs 3 Leanne Clara, but we put 5 in originally, and for 3 years we've really been able to enjoy that space because it was almost immediately full and had the impact that we wanted. But now we've reached the point where 2 of them need to go, so they can come out and be moved to the edge of the property and become screening plants. They can go out here on the street and we put on Facebook Marketplace and someone can pick them up and enjoy them in their garden, whatever. And the 3 that are remaining need to be hard pruned. And so sometime in the late winter, early spring, we'll probably cut them. We're going to take 2 out and cut the other 3 right in half. And then we have the perfect plants back in that space. So it's, again, it's something I knew going into this, that I'm overplanting it a little bit. No big deal. We were able to really very quickly enjoy the garden and what we had accomplished here in the garden without having to wait 5 or 6 years for that. And now we're doing a little bit of work to put it more in the proper spacing. So for a lot of folks in the country, the ground is probably frozen and you're not going to be outside planting and jumping into the garden. We can, luckily here in Raleigh and further south, we can do some of this work during the winter time, and we'll jump in and do a few of these things now. But again, this is mostly about planning, making sure that we're going to have the seed that we want, and some of the making sure that we're reserving space for some of the things that need to be moved around, and all planning for those kinds of things. And when we're going to be pruning things, some of the things that will need to be hard pruned out here are early spring flowering things. So we don't want to be pruning those things in the winter time. We want to make sure that we allow them to flower first, enjoy them, and then cut them hard. So knowing what you have in the garden is kind of important. The vegetable garden is going to get a big change because I'm going to move these 2 cattle panels that have been on the back of the vegetable garden. The way we have this design is just kind of wrapped around, and then we have all of our herbs, or where Steph is standing with the camera, a lot of our herbs and some of the things to draw pollinators in. Well, the whole garden's a pollinator garden, but lots of pollinator plants and herbs in that space she's standing in that adjoin the vegetable garden. I'm going to be moving these cattle panels forward a bit, and we're going to be putting 3 compost bins behind here. And so that's part of the planning, is what is this going to look like? What are these materials going to be? How's it going to look in the future? I'm going to have, by having these cattle panels forward and having our tomatoes and other vining vegetables on here, you're not going to be able to see the compost bins on the other side over here. So just thinking through the design, right, of how, if you're going to be adding things, if you're going to add a shed or you're going to add paths, all the kinds of things that you would think through in the garden, you can lay those things out now. You can take a water hose and lay it out in the garden in various shapes and ways to expand beds and see how things would look later. But again, so we're planning, right? Thinking about how the garden went this past year, thinking about if you want to lower your maintenance or increase your maintenance is another thing we talk about in the weekly garden planner frequently. Is just kind of knowing yourself, what you're capable, what kind of time you're going to have. Maybe you're traveling more this year, whatever. Maybe you're going to reduce, increase or reduce the amount of things you're going to be doing in the garden for next year. So that's what we're doing here in Raleigh. Let us know down below, what you're planning for in your garden in 2025. Thanks for watching.